All right, folks, so why is half of the crowd so loud and openly cheering for the crash? I spoke to both sides. I spoke to the sellers. I spoke to the loud crowd just to see what is going on. I got a couple of questions that they asked me, and I'm trying to answer that to my best ability. But what is going on? So in my personal opinion, I think a lot of sides here, both sides are withholding the true information. Whether you're a seller, whether you're a potential buyer, whether you're in the market, whether you never bought and you're just cheering on the people that are losing in today's market. Now, one of the question was like, hey, is the crash coming, right? And I believe that we are definitely in a crash, right? It might not look like the crash that everybody maybe is dreaming about, off cliff crash, 50% off overnight and stuff like that. But there has been definitely difficult situations for many. But then that half side of the crowd, like the loud crowd, the crowd that's cheering for this crash, I also interviewed them. I spoke to them. I asked them the questions. Why are you so loud about it? Why are you hating on people? Like they're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, whether it is the condo market, whether it is something that they have purchased, etc., right? And they told me straight up, they're like, look, they had no sympathy whatsoever when we were going through the pandemic and the prices were ludicrous and they were rising like crazy and all of that stuff. Like, these people had no sympathy. And in fact, some told me, like, even their friends told them straight up in their face, look, you cannot afford it, you will never afford it, and that's it, right? So you're always gonna be renting, and I'm more fortunate and I can buy now. And look, I bought today and my property went by, $50,000, $100,000 overnight, or that particular year, or whatever, right? So it was more of that bragging right at that time, and that equity gain. Because let's not forget, like, if somebody, the loud crowd that's cheering for the crash today, right? Like, they're sitting on the sidelines looking at the entire market and what's happening, and some were not fortunate enough to take that much credit or mortgage or risk, or they just didn't have that particular opportunity, right? So they were just sitting on sidelines and they watched these prices climb, so heavily, so consistently, that they have lost that belief, I would say, right? So I think those particular people and buyers were completely crushed, right? So they were crushed financially, they were crushed emotionally, they were crushed on so many levels. So I believe now the time changed a bit, of course, and situation has changed, and now they're cheering. They're like, you know what? Who cares? You had no sympathy when it was your time and when you were making all the best calls ever in your life. Now we don't care. Like, some people even said, like, look, like I want these properties to go by another 50% off, right? And then speaking to sellers and stuff like that, they said, like, look, we bought, we're over leveraged, we believed and we thought that it will never stop. It will continue to grow. It was advertised basically through many channels, and it was said that it will be stable. So they took extra risk just to gain as much as possible, hoping it will last forever. Now, we all know that nothing lasts forever. So I think that's the disconnect right now, and both parties are withholding the truth, the true information, right? Me speaking to some people, when I asked them, so you bought at X, you bought at the peak, now you're losing. The first thing that they say, and I don't even finish my sentence, the first thing they say, oh, it'll come back. I'm like, okay, I'm not disagreeing with you, but it will not come back as fast as you're anticipating, or you're believing, or you're hoping, right? So when I throw stuff out like, it'll be probably the next 5 to 10 years by the time you see, that peak price again. No, that cannot happen. It'll happen much faster. I'm like, where is your evidence? I mean, there's really no evidence. So I believe they speak from fear, right? Because they know they're in mud up to here. They know it. They feel it. And it's like, okay, so I cannot move forward anymore. I cannot move backwards anymore. And I'm basically stuck. So I hope something out there, a miracle happens, and I don't know. I just somehow either get out or I pay my debt somehow or stuff like that, right? So this is what I kind of feel what is going on. Also, what I feel that many folks told me straight up when I asked, directly, I'm like, how would you feel if you, sold for a loss, and you downsized, or you maybe moved to a different community that's less expensive and stuff like that, and it's just how it is. Like you can shift your life with a little bit of the equity you have, and you could probably have a better quality of life. 9 out of 10 times what I've heard was like, I cannot do that, right? Like, what is my neighbor going to think? What are my friends going to say? My people in the community and all of that stuff. So this is how far people go, and we don't realize how much we influence other people, and we are influenced by others, which is very interesting, right? And it is just crazy, but I told him, I'm like, you can barely afford what you have, what you're writing, barely, and yet you're continuing to suffer just because you don't want to call it the end, and you become, like, let's say, a renter, or you downsize or change your lifestyle to better, right? So that was something interesting, right? And then, these people on the sideline and stuff like that, they were just emotionally crushed. Like, that's basically the best way I could put it. They were just emotionally crushed, maybe financially crushed, and at that time, right? And just looking, at some cases from back in the day, like, these people had, kids and their family, a couple and stuff like that. And they're like, look, I will never, ever be able to afford a property for my children, right? And I'm always going to be stuck. And the little money that I have, is just sitting there. So it's like, it's that mind-boggling, like, crazy situation to be in. But that was the truth. So this, I feel, is the truth. Now, speaking to somebody recently, they're trying to sell, and they've been on the market for 3 months already. Beautiful community and all of that stuff. They're not reducing the price, period. I spoke to them, their listing is expiring and stuff like that. I said, like, okay, so you're stuck, at this particular price, and your property is just not worth this value that you're claiming it is. And just tell me why you think that is, and we can go from there. But your value at this point is probably $200,000 less. So the first thing that they said is, like, I don't have to sell. So why are you selling? Why are you on the market and you listed your property and because you don't want to sell, right? So the one major downfall with that, you're selling everybody else's property. If you're holding that particular price at X and you're just sitting there and you know, you're selling everybody else, right? Because whoever needs to sell or really wants to sell, they will reduce or adjust and they will actually sell. So you're doing your neighborhood or your neighbors a huge favor, which is okay. And if you don't have to sell, fine, but take it off the market, man. Like, what are you doing? So another comeback was like, look, this is my price, but I'm willing to negotiate if somebody gives me an offer. I said, okay, so, but people are not there yet. Maybe some are, maybe some agents are, maybe some agents are not. But, you know, like, we are conditioned for a long time that, you know, even if you submitted an offer that was very, very low, below the asking price, way below the asking price, sellers 9 out of 10 times would be offended. Period. That's it. They'll be offended. The agents would get yelled at and all of that stuff, right? Even though it's a free market, free trade, like, I mean, if somebody submits an offer, somebody submits an offer. Like, well, what's a big deal, right? So I find that's another handbrake why a lot of people are not trying or submitting that reasonable or lower or low blow offers and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of out of the equation because of that, of yelling, right? So nobody wants to be yelled at, right? So let's get into some questions. Is it morally wrong to cheer when someone loses money in real estate, or is it just a natural outcome of years of greed and speculation? Well, I personally think, you know, you should not be laughing or mocking anyone ever, period, right? However, I think people are just fed up overall with the overall situation, that it's becoming just like an after effect of what has happened. And I don't think these people are hating to that extent. It's just like, you know what I mean? Like, I told you so kind of situation. I think this is what is becoming now. I told you so situation, and I'm right, you're wrong, you're losing, who cares? I don't care kind of thing, right? If homeowners were celebrating massive gains when prices rose, do they have the right to expect sympathy when those same prices collapse? I think that's exactly what's happening, right? Even though sellers, in my opinion, are being very tactical, and they're hiding, like, even amongst friends and people that you know, like, nobody walks up to you and says, hey, look, I'm in debt up to here and I cannot afford my next mortgage payment. Like, people don't say that, right? Like openly, just like that, right? So I think they're just withholding that information. They're hoping for the best. They're acting more, you know, on the situation. And it's just that, like, you know what I mean? Oh, it'll come back even stronger than it was, kind of thing, right? So I think there's just like a disconnect. Are average Canadians actually victims of the housing crash, or were they active participants in a debt-driven bubble they believed would never end? I think it's a little bit of both, right? Like, I think the promise was made, you know, interest rates and all of that stuff. You know, we were obviously in the pandemic and whatnot, but then the situation escalated just a little bit by the push, a little bit naturally, right? And, you know, we were kind of like put to the wall when it comes to certain things. And it's just a natural behavior, because I think at the end of the day, you know, people are looking at this situation as business. Well, I don't care, you know, I made 100 grand. So if I can buy 10 of these, I'll make $1 million. It's a very simple math, right? So I think everybody just becomes egoistic, maybe at certain points, and they just become, you know, businessmen or entrepreneurs or speculators overnight or whatever. But nobody cares about nobody at the end of the day, right? So when prices fall, is it truly a loss for society, or is it finally the beginning of affordability for the next generation? So this is a very good question. I think I've spoke about this in some of my other videos, and I believe that capitalism, free market capitalism, should not have any interference, because it kind of operates on autopilot. Think about it for a second, right? If the price is too high, you just don't buy, right? And I can give you 1,000 examples. So let me give you one. In 2002, right, why didn't you buy a plasma TV, right, like a 50-inch? Because they were costing like $30,000, right? So, but when they came down to 5,000 or 3,000 or 2,000 or whatever, you went out and you purchased a plasma TV, right? Later on, LCD, Q, this, that, whatever, but that's the bottom line. So the market is very simple, right? You just have to let it ride, and good companies, good people, entrepreneurs, massive undertaking in certain sectors bring the price down, knowledge, and there you go. So the market adjusts, and there's really no issues whatsoever. Do we feel sorry for homeowners who over-leveraged, or should the sympathy go to renters and young Canadians who were locked out for years? This is a very good question. I don't think that those people that over-leveraged themselves had the slightest idea or believe, or they were not even dreaming that things could change, right? Because the mindset is like a casino mindset. Like when you're winning, lucky hand after lucky hand after lucky hand, right? Even if your best friend comes and says, look, it's enough, leave, right? It's the greed factor, right? So should we feel sorry? No. Why should we feel sorry? Like nobody should feel sorry for nobody, because they were kind of doing it to themselves, and everybody is an adult and a grown-up, so they can make decisions based on whatever, right? And the consequences are the consequences, right? So, you know, there are a million cases today in the world, companies that are failing, they lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Do you feel sorry for them? No. They try their best. What if they have made it? They would be $1 billion company, right? So I think, no, we shouldn't feel sorry. And I think a reset, it's needed, period, because we cannot sustain ourselves moving forward for the next generation. And yes, a lot of people will lose a lot of money. However, you know, a lot more people will get into the market, which will kind of adjust itself. So I hope you like this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.